So I was listening to a speech by Dr. Dijkstra, an entomologist, and he was talking about how pests won't attack a healthy plant. And I found it fascinating. I thought I'd share that information with you guys. And if you guys don't know, my name's Dennis. I'm from the Las Vegas Worm Farm. I got worms, and I like soil biology. So Dr. Dijkstra was talking about plant health and how pests didn't like to feed on a healthy plant. And a healthy plant is a plant that is without disease or any other issues. And then he stated that each pest has a different preference on not only the type of plant that it wants to feed on, but the condition of the plant. And that condition of the plant is how much sugar that plant is actually producing. These sugars indicate how healthy a plant actually is. And it's measured in Brix. Brix is the level of sugar in the sap of a plant. I got a meter back here. So this is a Brix meter. What you would do is you would lift this flap up, you would put a plant sap on there, and then you would look through this piece into the sunlight, and it will give you a reading anywhere from 0 to 20. Actually, I think it goes higher than 20, but we're going to stick with that number. And the higher the number is, the higher the Brix is, the more sugar that plant's creating, the healthier it is. In his presentation, he specifically talked about aphids, and he stated that aphids won't attack a plant if the Brix is over 6. That's it. 6. That's all the Brix has to be above. And aphids won't mess with it. So if you have aphids, that means the Brix of the plant is probably 6 or below. The next thing I remember he talked about was grasshoppers. So if you guys remember, it was last year, the year before last, we had an infestation of grasshoppers. It was bad. I mean, they decimated everything in my yard. Well, grasshoppers have a higher tolerance than aphids when it comes to Brix. So they can chew on a plant all the way up to about 12 Brix. That means if the aphids aren't touching your plant at 7 or 8 Brix, that grasshopper will. He will come over and have a field day. But if you can get the Brix of that plant above 12, or we'll say 12 and above, that grasshopper might come take a bite, but he's going to move right on along because it's not going to be good for him. He's not going to like that. So, based on what I learned from the Soil Food Web, I can increase the Brix by increasing the amount of nutrients the plant gets. If the plant gets more nutrients, it can produce more sugars. It can be healthier. And I was like, boy, this comes full circle. Back to soil health. And I always think that there's 4 things the soil needs. Soil needs air, it needs water, it needs food, and it needs microbes. Air and water is pretty simple. As long as we got that, we're good. Food, what is food? Food is organic material. We need organic material in the soil. And that organic material is great because sometimes it has nutrients already in it. But sometimes that nutrients is not available to your plant and you need something to break that down. And most of the time that is the case. Well, what breaks down this organic material into nutrients that your plant can take up? Microbes. Microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, protozoas, nematodes, all those little dudes that I can see under my microscope are the ones that break down this organic material and turn it into nutrients that your plant can actually use. where do we get these microbes from? Well, you get some of them from compost. Not all compost is the same. So if we talk about living organisms, right? Living organisms, me and you, we're living. So are microorganisms. What do we need to survive? We need air and water. Well, if it comes in a sealed bag with no holes in it from a shelf that we don't know how long it's been sitting on, I can't tell you if there's microorganisms in it or not unless I put it under a microscope. But from what I know about living organisms is that if you cut off the air and you cut off the water, you cut off life. Because if I can't breathe, I can't live. If I can't drink water, I can't survive. So, where do we get these microorganisms? Talked about compost. And the next thing is worm castings. Compost do have some microorganisms in it, depending on how the compost is created. Not everything's equal, like I said. But this is where I like to focus on worm castings. Worm castings have an extremely high amount of microorganisms. And this is why I like worm castings. Because it has plenty of the biology in it. And I make sure that the biology is in it because I use my microscope and test it. I follow all the rules the Soil Food Web taught me. And we definitely exceed minimum requirements for all your microorganisms. So, when we talk about how do we produce a healthy plant, right? How do we increase the bricks? Well, we add that organic material. I like to use compost. And then we add those microorganisms, worm castings. And that's all I got to do. I'm hands off at that point and I let the plant choose what it wants to. I build the buffet and the plant comes and feeds and it takes care of itself. I just have to make sure that I keep feeding, which is at least twice a year. And I have the microorganisms. If the soil is healthy, I shouldn't have to add more microorganisms. But I do, just to make sure. So, if your plants were struggling this summer, we can give the plant a buffet of food to choose from to make sure it has the best chance to survive. Not just heat stress, but also nutrient deficiencies and pests and disease. Increase the bricks: food, water, air, and microbes. Healthy soil, healthy plant. If it grows, give it microbes. Like, share, and subscribe if you found this information useful. We'll see you later.